unless we get through this area here, which is now 28 to 28.6 or so, then you would favor the downside, okay? If it gets through this area, it can reattack this 31, 32,000 level, maybe then breaking out.
In today's video, Chief Market Strategist of InTheMoneyStocks.com Gareth Soloway tells us all about his latest analysis of the charts as well as his predictions and price targets for Bitcoin. Soloway shares his opinion regarding high inflation rates, the stock market, the crypto market, and the Fed.
So, number one, yesterday we saw the JOLTS number. Now, the JOLTS number is basically how many job openings there are in the economy. And everyone was expecting a 9.6 number, 9.6 million job openings. Now, again, that's what the market was pricing in. It came in around 8.8 million. Much, much, much less than expected. Now, you might say, well, that's bad for the economy. You're right, it's bad for the economy, but you know what? It's great because the Fed has been so hawkish in Jerome Powell's conversations or speech last week from Jackson Hole and also from the Fed minutes the week prior. So a hawkish Fed means the market wants weak economic data. They got weak economic data. We saw the markets ripping higher. Now the dollar was falling. So as soon as we get weak economic data, what ends up happening is that yields begin to drop. The 10-year, we're going to go over that chart in a minute. And then the dollar falls. When the dollar falls and yields fall, the market breathes a sigh of relief. Remember, dollar falling means generally we're expecting easier monetary policy, aka money printing. All right, now we're not at that point yet, right? I mean, let's be fair. We're not at money printing yet, but it's the beginning stages, and that's why the market loves it. All right, so again, yesterday, the JOLTS number was key. This morning, we got ADP private sector numbers. They just came out at 8:15 a.m. Eastern time. They came in 177,000. Estimates were for 200,000. Now, that's a slightly weaker number, so it's somewhat reinforcing what we saw yesterday from the JOLTS number, but the previous number from last month on ADP was revised higher. So I would say that number, because of the revision higher from last month, slightly lower this month, they cancel each other out. It is not a big event. All right, lastly, I just want to talk about this. GDP came in. This is the second read. So every quarter we get 3 reads of GDP. We get first one, which is preliminary, then the first revision, then the second revision. The second revision was today. So it's basically when they finally get all the numbers in and they can really see the data. It came in at 2.1% GDP versus last read was 2.4. So that's a slightly weaker number. So overall, we had an ADP number that was neutral-ish and then a GDP that was slightly weaker. What's that mean? It means the dollar is likely going to go down and we're going to see yields also probably pull back. So let's jump right into the charts here. This is your daily chart of the DXY. This is the dollar chart. Very, very important chart because, again, the markets have been struggling because the dollar's been going up so strongly. Now, you see I have a trend line back here, right? So if we go back here and I zoom out, I'm going to show you where that trend line comes from all the way back here. And what we can see here on the trend lines is that in general, bear with me here, in general, what we've seen is that the markets have continued to kind of price in a dollar that was rallying recently, okay, but again, ran into resistance. Now we're starting to see a pullback right here, and I want to just zoom in on that period because I do think it's worth keeping an eye on. So if we zoom in on this, we can see that the dollar, okay, the last couple days, so this was where we hit, which was basically on Friday of last week. That's a doji, by the way. Dojis are generally reversal signals after a long move up. It's basically a tail at the top or a wick at the top, tail at the bottom, and a close in that middle portion. That's a beginning signal. It's not as powerful as a topping tail or a bottoming tail or a reversal engulfing candle, but it still can show you that there's a potential reversal taking place. And then we saw Monday a small pullback in the dollar, yesterday a massive pullback, and today we're seeing another drop in the dollar. When the dollar is falling right now, when the dollar goes down, markets generally want to go up. All right, it's that inverse relationship. Now, there will be a point in the future, further down the line, probably 3-6 months out, where a fall in the dollar when we get into a recession becomes a negative because people start to get so scared about the recession that a falling dollar just signals a worse and worse recession. That's not where we are right now. Right now, we're in this zone right here. Dollar weakness is market strength. Okay, so that's your little update on the US dollar. Now, where would the US dollar pull back to? Let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how low can the dollar fall in the near term? Well, for me to do that, basically what I'm going to do is go back to this chart here, which we were just on zoomed out on the DXY, bring up my trend line, and we're going to start from the same base point down here, and we're going to drag it to this low here. Okay? Now, what that does is it gives us a band to look for maybe a pullback to about 100.45 on the dollar in the near term. Again, if that does occur, it could be bullish for the markets in the near term. I want to cover crypto real fast, then we'll get into the stock market and various stocks out there. I want to look at gold as well, so we'll look at that. But yesterday we had the grayscale news. So basically another loss for the SEC. The SEC's getting pummeled, guys. I mean, again, I don't know what the heck's going on with them, why they're bringing these suits. They have to know that there might not be a shot at them winning, so I'm not really sure why they're going after it, but it just starts to look bad when they keep losing. They lost the Ripple case. Now they're losing the grayscale case, right? And ultimately, this is pushing the crypto markets to believe that a spot ETF is more and more likely. It's shifting that probability further and further. I think a spot ETF is coming, and grayscale basically is confirming that. So what did we see? Does this change the crypto markets? And the answer is no, it doesn't, right? So this is the kicker. Every time there's good news, you see the bulls in crypto, and I understand, right? Crypto traders and investors, they want to see the next bull market. They want to make $1 million out of 10,000. I understand. But you also have to look at the charts, and I'm a chartist and a dataist, right? Basically, we're looking at a chart here. So we have this longer trend here, right? So let me go over this. You have this trend line here, and you have this top trend line. That's what creates a wedge pattern, right? It creates this pattern here, right? And what happened was we broke down below 28,000. Now, that was a level I was talking about for literally a month prior as being a major pivotal level. It's this upsloping trend line from here to here to here. This broke. Now, if you've listened to my game plans at all, or if you know my methodology, if you've taken the Winning Trader series, whatever it may be, what you know is that there's a tendency for breakdowns to occur, and then you get a retrace to the scene of the crime. All right, the scene of the crime being the level it broke from. Now, that's exactly what we got here. And again, this was very important because it retraced right to 28,000 and change, hitting this pivot point right below this upsloping yellow line. Now, it's still possible we could go up and test the yellow line somewhere up here, but ultimately, unless Bitcoin, and this is just facts, guys. And again, I understand crypto, Twitter, and so forth doesn't want to hear this, but I'm just a chartist. I'm just giving you the facts, or at least the probabilities, right? And the probabilities say that unless we get through this area here, which is now 28 to 28.6 or so, then you would favor the downside, okay? If it gets through this area, it can reattack this 31, 32,000 level, maybe then breaking out. But what I always say to you guys, and is so important, is respect support, respect resistance until it is broken. All right, our hearts, our emotion, they always want us, they always push us to say, oh, it can break, it's gonna blow through this, it's gonna go here, it's gonna go. But in essence, what it comes down to is resistance until proven otherwise. And that's what we're saying here. So you have to watch this 28 to 28.6 level. That's going to be the key on the chart. Now let's flip over to Ethereum here. So if we look at Ethereum, right, same kind of deal. Let me just erase these lines so we clean out the chart for everyone. So here's your Ethereum chart. And again, Ethereum had much the same breakdown. The only difference in Ethereum here is that it made a lower low. All right, so again, just flipping back to Bitcoin real quick, is that Bitcoin, if you look here, this low never got taken out by this low. So technically speaking, at least Bitcoin has that going for it, is that it has a higher low still intact. But if we flip over to this chart of Ethereum, all right, we can see, and I'm going to zoom in again, we can see here, guys, that Ethereum made a low here and it made a lower low here. Now, it's still got a bounce, but basically the same thing applies, that on the bounce, unless you recapture this line, this is just a retrace after an oversold situation on Ethereum. All right, so again, just understand that. That's really important. You're looking basically at 1850-ish, give or take, as your level that it needs to get above for Ethereum to recapture this level. And then honestly, then you have this trend line too that you're going to have to run into, right? Pivot high here to pivot high here, and that's at just above 1900, right? So resistance 1, resistance 2, if it gets through there, then you can retest the double top at around 2100 and change.